everyone. Welcome to Buzzing About Romance. I am Becky.
And I am Leah.
And we are super excited to welcome Katie Robinson from Lyric Audio back. Hi, Katie.
Hi. Hi, ladies. How are you?
We're great. We're so
Good.
excited to have you back. We brought you back without all the chaos. You were kind enough to join us when we had our audiobook narrators on. But you came back because we want to help readers find audiobooks.
Yeah, that's really exciting. First of all, I really enjoyed that episode. It's nice to get to catch up with that many narrators at the same time. So that was a really fun vibe. But thank you so much for inviting me back.
Sure, we're excited. I call that episode like the chaotic episode just because
It was very chaotic.
there were even going back and listening to it, so many conversations, but so much good information.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we need to narrow this down. So let's, Leah and I were talking, and one of the things that we're trying to do in 2023 is help readers find all the ways to read. So earlier in the year, we talked about how to find new authors and ways to do it on a budget and affordably with newsletters and stuff like that. And then we were like, well, what about audiobooks? Because it can be hit or miss.
In our community, just the Buzzing About Romance community, we have a few members who they do. Do you hear this? I'm sorry. There's noises all over my house right now. It's bedtime. There's chaos. But anyway, so our community, there are some people they do 99% of their reading through an audiobook, but it can be very expensive if you don't have the right tools for it. So that is one reason we decided we needed to really dive deep into this world.
So
yeah.
So as we said, on this episode of Buzzing About Romance, we're talking all about audiobooks, how to get started in audiobooks. We'll also talk about the different audiobook platforms that are available. And as we said, joining us for this episode is Katie Robinson, executive producer and owner, right? You're owner now.
Yes. Yeah,
of Lyric Audiobooks. Congratulations. That's a little different than the last time we...
Well, because the last time we talked to you, you weren't allowed to say anything, but it was kind of in the works.
Yes, yeah. So Andy and I had been kind of working on it for a while, just doing a slow transition. So we hadn't, formally announced anything yet and made it, had it set in stone. But we did kind of set everything in stone as of September 2022. So yeah, finished off the last quarter of the year with me at the charge, I guess, which is definitely different because Andy was such a really, great and passionate and vocal leader, for Lyric, but also I think in the romance audio community at large. So it's, it's a little bit, it's definitely big shoes to fill, but I'm really lucky because, she's still the founder. She's still on as my mentor, and she's still, my number one resource and person to talk to when it comes to industry stuff.
So, established in 2014 by award-winning romance narrator Andy Arndt, Lyric Audiobooks offers a turnkey and audiobook production services to indie romance authors. We will link Lyric Audiobooks, and we will link all the things in our on-the-shelf show notes so that if you're interested in finding out more about Lyric Audio, you can find that on our website when the episode drops. So, Katie, tell us a little bit your origin story to audiobooks. How have you always been a reader?
Yes. I've always been a reader. I actually wanted to go to university for English Lit, and my dad was very against it because he thought I wouldn't be able to get a job. So I went for environmental science instead. And I really loved it. I was very hippy dippy in high school and my first few years of college. But I was I spent most of my time reading, even when I was at school, reading fiction. So after I graduated, I pretty much immediately was like, oh, this isn't for me. And I ended up teaching English overseas for a few years. And then when I came back, I was like, okay, I really want to get into publishing because while I was teaching overseas, I dabbled in curriculum creation. And I realized I wanted to really dig into that a little bit more. So yeah, so I just tried my best to get back into publishing, or into publishing, I should say. I was really lucky. I got a job at audiobooks.com, which is actually a retailer I'm sure we'll talk about, or mention even later. They were starting a publishing arm. And because it was kind of more of a tech-based company, they were taking kind of more interesting risks. It was like less like a traditional publishing house. It was, like they weren't necessarily looking for someone who knew everything about audiobooks. They were looking for someone who really wanted to learn. And when I took that job, I had a really great mentor. I was able to move up really quickly and, start doing more and more. And that's how I got into production. I actually started as an acquisitions editor and social media manager. So I got to kind of learn everything all at once, which was really fun. And I did go back to school and take some classes that were more publishing specific. And yeah, and then eventually I got to start an imprint that was romance focused. And that's when I really got into production. And that's when like my love of romance really took off. I had dabbled in romance, but I would say I was just kind of like across the board genre reader before that. And when my boss and I had talked about starting a romance imprint, we were like, wow, this community is so supportive, so vocal, so excited about the content that like is created in romance audio, that we were like, we have to like break into this market. It's so fun. And, we're both like young women and we were just like, wow, this is so cool to like find this community. So at the time I was like, okay, but neither of us know enough about romance. This seems a little bit crazy. So I ditched all of my responsibilities as an acquisitions editor, like at large, and focused just on reading romance for like 3 months. I was like, I'm only reading romance. I'm going to find like, I'll read for work but it has to be romance books still, submissions. And I just found, okay, what genres do I like, or subgenres? What tropes do I like? Until I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best genre ever. Why aren't all of the ones I'm reading? I started to realize that like a lot of the books I had been reading for pleasure, like I read a lot of fantasy, for instance, I was like very invested in the relationships, and I'd be like, oh man, why aren't they making out already? Or like I'd be like, when it was enemies to lovers, but they didn't get quite lovery enough, I would be like really upset. And then I'd read romance and was like, oh, thank God this is happening. Why didn't I think to just switch over in the first place?
That is the quandary of being a romance reader, because you read
Yeah.
the other genres and you're like, why aren't we doing
Yeah.
it already?
Yeah.
Why are things not moving forward here, people?
Yeah. Even when I was younger, like I remember reading through my mom's like mass market mysteries when I was 13. You just kind of read through the house office library kind of thing. And I read so many Mary Higgins Clark's books.
I love
and
those books. They're so
yeah,
good.
there's addictive, right? But I
They
even
are.
remember then being like, why don't these two make out harder? Like, like just like I wanted to take them like my Barbie dolls and like force them to kiss, right? And then I don't know why it took like becoming an adult to be like, oh, duh, this is a whole genre of books that's like completely untapped for me. And yeah, that 3 months where I got to focus on that, not just at home, but at work, was like amazing. Like I came into work, I feel like at some point I just came back into work and was like, let's do this. Let's start this imprint. I was like so jazzed, so excited. And luckily my boss was, super supportive at the time and like very excited too. It was really nice to work, I think, especially, in romance specifically, there's a lot of us women working in it. So it was great to work with her. So that's kind of what was my jumping off point. And I don't know if this is ironic, but it's kind of funny. I tried so desperately to cast Andy in so many books and I couldn't get her. So like
So
every
funny.
time I'd reach out to her, she'd be like, I'm sorry, like my September is completely full. And I'd be like, oh, like, and then I'd try again a couple months later and she would be too booked up. And I really just made it a goal. Like I have to cast Andy Art in something. This is getting ridiculous. And that was right around the time that she was working on kind of starting Lyric. So eventually that company shut down because it was, a tech company, and they decided to sell off the publishing arm. And yeah, when I lost my job, I went back. I went to work at a literary agency for a little while. It didn't feel like the right fit. Like it was, going into the traditional publishing side, it was like a very different vibe. And I realized like halfway through that I was just like, I really miss audio and I really miss romance. Like, this is what I want to be reading. This is what I want to be doing for work. It's like fast paced, it's fun, it's like exciting. And so I kind of just, quit my job and started my own business and started freelancing, which was really crazy. But eventually found my way to Andy. She was hiring for a new producer, like, gosh, quite a few years ago now, I guess. I don't even know what year that was. And one of my friends that I had, worked with in the audiobook world would like sent me the Facebook job ad and was like, Katie, you have to apply for this. You'd be perfect. And, the rest is history, as they say.
So what do you think is so magical about indie romance? Because I have the same feeling. Like, you get to a trad pub book and they're fine. They're fine. But I feel like there's sometimes magic missing. And when I read indie, I find that magic.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely still read a lot of traditional romance too. Yeah, I think for me, it's that it's like there's like a hustle that is different for a lot of these authors. Like when they are self-publishing, they are putting everything into that book, and they a lot of the time are doing a lot of work on their own. They might hire an editor and like a proofreader and stuff, and have even an assistant, but they have to just put in so much, like not just manual labor, but emotional labor into like putting it out into the world that, I mean, I know traditional authors still have to do, but when you're self-publishing, like everything kind of is resting on your shoulders. You don't get any like extra support unless you're paying for it, essentially, or you get lucky and you have some really great fans that like want to scream your name from the rooftop.
Well, I think with traditional publishing, there's some safety nets because you
Yeah,
do
right?
have that company that is
Yes,
there giving you deadlines and backing you up. And
exactly. And giving you marketing, like support and money, essentially.
I think part of it though too is like the indie world, like there's no limits on what an author can do in a book. Like they don't have anybody saying you can't use this word, this word, this word, or this word. Like there's no buzzword list. There's no box that they have to fit their work into. And so they are able to take risks that you don't expect in a book. And sometimes it does not work, and that's okay. But I think that that's part of it too. It's like there's that magical, like you never know what's going to be in an indie published book.
Yeah. And I think I don't know, there's something about, and again, there's lots of authors I work with that are hybrid. And I think they still maintain that magic, like on both sides for sure. So it's not like if you're traditionally published, you absolutely can't tap into that magic. You definitely can. But yeah, there's just something, you're right. It's almost like an open to possibilities-ness about it. It's like more of it feels like a passion project, even though they are all passion projects. There's like a feel to it that makes that really more evident.
yeah. So we're going to just dabble a little bit in this because this is not the main part of why we asked you to be on. But when an author works with Lyric, what does Lyric do to assist the author in the audiobook process? So as a company as whole, I'm an author. I've got a book. I want to turn into an audiobook. Lyric says, yeah, okay, come. We're ready to work with you. What all does Lyric do to help them with that process?
Yeah, I mean, we usually call it a white glove service. So essentially, all we really need from the author in order to make the audiobook happen is their manuscript. And then how much they want to be involved in the actual production from there is completely up to them. So some authors, they just have the manuscript. They don't mind who is cast. They might have a few ideas, and then you can kind of pitch ideas back to them. We cast, we record, we give it back, and that's it. Other authors are more involved in the casting process, or they come to us with like very specific voices in mind. Sometimes people come to us and we do a lot of auditions to try to find the perfect voice. So like I said, it kind of depends on the author client. But essentially, once you start working with us, your producer becomes your point of contact person, and they kind of become like the expert at your stuff. So the way Lyric works is once you've worked with that producer once, that's your producer with us for as long as you work with us. And so we get to know our authors really well. And just like as an example, like I know if Kristen Proby is submitting a new project to me, I already know, okay, I can choose one of these 6 narrators and she'll be super excited. I can reach out to them before she even says anything and see who's available, right? Or like Catherine Cowles, like is another good example. She has her favorites. I know who they are, but she also comes and says, like, I know exactly who she, she writes with certain voices in her head for the next book in the series. So that's really fun. But yeah, again, it kind of just depends on the author, how involved they want to be. So sometimes, their manuscript takes more prep, especially if we're doing something like a duet or a full cast production. Other times they just give us the book and are like, here, go, great. So yeah, it's really kind of up to them how involved they want to be. But yeah, once they're kind of with us and once we have that manuscript, things go right into scheduling, obviously. And we do a lot of casting and scheduling with the narrators before a manuscript is even ready, because I'm sure, as you can imagine, there are some very popular narrators who book out very far in advance. So if there are any authors listening, if you have a popular narrator in mind, the earlier you can kind of start planning for that, the better. You don't, for probably, and not just for lyric, just producers across the board,
Period, yeah.
you don't need all of your information. You don't need your manuscript ready in order to start booking. You just need like a script ready date in sight and your hopeful narrators. That's really it. And if you have no idea who you want to narrate, that's what your producer's for. They can tell you. All they need is a little bit of character background, or even just like, okay, I need a man and a woman, and I have no idea what I'm going to do yet. You can start there if you want to. So yeah, once things move into recording and prepping, that's when it starts to move really quickly. So it's really the scheduling out that eats up time. And then, yeah, the prepping and recording, usually that's done in like a week. And then editing and mastering, that's done in almost another week. Then things get kicked back to the author for beta listen. I have a lot of authors that do this differently. So again, that's also up to the author. Do they want help finding a beta listener? We can help with that. Do they want to listen themselves? Absolutely, they can. Do they want like a team of beta listeners? Or maybe they already have some people in their fan groups that really want to listen to their first audiobook. That's great. You can tap into that. So at that point, once we've delivered the audio, the producer becomes almost like an additional support person. So maybe a beta listener finds something that's like, oh, this sounds a little off, or, this was mispronounced or something. They kick that back to us and we get it fixed up. And then they, get moving on distribution. So again, your producer kind of acts as a support person there. If you've never done it before, that's who you can talk to about, okay, what are my best options? Should I go ACX exclusive? Should I do 90 days exclusive and then go wide? Or should I just go wide out the back? And like, which platforms are the best to upload to? That kind of thing. That's what you can ask your producer about. And then eventually it's release day and you get to celebrate. And Lyric will also kind of help celebrate there too. So we consider that part of our job. And we're trying to incorporate more and more of that as we go along. But for now, we have an amazing social media manager.
We got to
really
hang
great.
out with
We
her.
did, yes.
You did?
She
On the
came to
podcast?
she
Or
came
in
to Drunk
person?
Book Club with
No,
us.
she
Oh, really?
came to
Was it-
Christmas Festivus.
Oh, Christmas Festivus.
Amazing.
She
Oh
came.
yeah, she came in on night work because we do Festivus and it's a night where we air our grievances
And she's like,
and we
I
don't
want to
hold
come.
back.
And we're like,
And she came and hung out.
she's like, but I have to
out.
be at the airport at like 6 a.m. the next morning because they were headed to Florida for the holiday Christmas weekend. And I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
sure. We
Oh,
were
and that
out
was
until
when
3 a.m. Like we were up
Oh my
just
gosh.
chatting
I was
romance
not. I
books
had to go to bed.
till 3 a.m. And I was like, I messaged her the next morning and I was like, did you make your flight?
Well,
like,
but that was the weekend that like all the flights were all messed up too,
Yes.
and like half the flights were canceled, and we didn't know if she was even going to be able to fly out. We were very worried about
Yeah.
her travel plans.
She hung out with us. She hasn't come back, but she totally hung out with us.
I'm sure she still like listens in and stuff. She's so great. And she knows so much about the romance community at large. And she's just been so supportive and so great. And she's genuinely so excited about, every author that we get to work with and all of our new releases and stuff. Like she's kind of one of our first listeners in a way, because she often is like pulling teasers and stuff like that. And she'll get, oh my gosh, did you hear Teddy Hamilton in this one? I'm like, yeah. So she's really amazing. And that's a big part of her job is like, how can we further support the author's marketing and promotional efforts. So that's like a big thing that we're stepping more into this year. And we're going to, keep moving in that direction so that we can provide that kind of post-production support in that way
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Team Sawyer Bennett like loves
Mhm.
Lyric Audio.
Oh,
They
that's so
tout
nice.
you guys like Lisa and Sawyer both are just always have great things to say about you guys too. So
Well, I can't take any credit for that. That is all Kim. That's their producer. She's also amazing.
did
I think
you
any author that's worked with her loves her to death.
did you see that Aiden Snow read her grocery and her Christmas
I
menu
did.
No, it was just the Christmas
or the
menu that
Christmas
was
menu?
delightful.
We
Yes,
laughed.
that was
No, but then
great.
all of us were like, Aiden can totally just read from the dictionary for me.
Absolutely, right? I know.
Like, can we just produce that where Aiden just reads like the A's?
It was so funny. It was so funny. Okay, so I'm super excited. You guys have this project called Audio and Color, and actually, we are going to feature a quick shot of, I think it was last year's Audio and Color book selection, uh, Blind Date with a Book Boyfriend by Lucy Eden.
Right. Yeah. So Lucy Eden did win. She is a grantee of the Audio and Color program, but that was actually for a different book. This is actually her second audiobook with us.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So she did Cherishing the Goddess for Audio and Color and was accepted and won. And we produced that. And that one's read by Jacob Morgan and Mari. It's really great. Also, like, P.S. Mari is such a great narrator if you haven't listened to her. But yeah, so she did that book, and then she came back because, the book was so well received that she decided to do Blind Date with a Book Boyfriend. That one's in duet. That's Wesley Siobhan and Oscar Reyes, and it is so amazing. That was like one of the first Zoom sessions I had sat in on a while since it's duet. So I was just like, listening in and being a total creeper and like giggling the whole time. Like I had to make sure that I kept myself on mute because they were just like, their banter was so amazing. Like I immediately was like, okay, we need to grab bloopers because their back and forth was so good. So I'm really excited to listen to your episode about that, about that book
We're
because
so excited.
I'm
I've already
excited
listened to the first hour
and
of
Lucy
the book.
gave us a few
I was
like links to it. So I have it on my book funnel right now, but I did not listen yet. But
We're
that's
so
one of those
excited.
ones that like I'm gonna need like a chunk of time where nobody is in my house so I can just listen and not be bothered.
And it's a quick listen, but it's like, it's so fun. And the two, like, honestly, Wesley and Oscar, they're just, I feel like they're just like batting them back and forth. It's like a tennis match at certain points. And there's a lot of like Romance Landia references, which is really cute too. So it's a lot of fun.
We're super excited for that. Okay, so let's talk audiobook platforms. So when did you start listening to audiobooks? Was it when you worked for the tech company, or had you kind of dabbled previous? Because I am old, and previous to 2014, 2015, audiobooks were like 27,000 CDs.
Yes.
Or a book on tape. I've listened to books on tape.
Yeah.
So
this will also, it sounds a little crazy, but I'm a vinyl like record collector. That's like my other very audio driven hobby, which is, I guess, kind of strange now in hindsight that everything is audio in this house. But my grandfather actually used to collect like classic stories on vinyl. So I have like a few that I inherited from him. So I used to listen to those, and my husband is a big horror fan. So we have a lot of H.P. Lovecraft on vinyl. So that started when I was like younger, actually. And then it kind of, there's been breaks in time, but I definitely actually, while I was living overseas, I listened to audiobooks because I commuted a lot. And I kind of started listening to them again. Also, I was a teacher. And in English teaching, the more that, a student is listening to English words, the better. So I would turn on children's audio books in the classroom that I bought on CD there. It was just like part of like something you could get from like teacher stores, where the kids could like sit and quietly read along and listen, but like while we were working on other things too. And Yeah, so I guess it's kind of been in and out of my world for like most of my life in a way, but I didn't start like listening a lot again until pretty much, yeah, right before I started working at the audiobook company. And then I got a free membership and it just like obviously took off. They were kind enough to gift that to their employees. And yeah, then and I was commuting long commutes then as well. So I was listening to like a few a week and as
Yeah.
many as I could.
So, over on our website, we do have an article that breaks down all the audiobook platforms, how to access them, the way their systems work.
Hmm.
And so that will coincide with the release of this episode. So, you guys are going to check out the website for all the specifics because we're not going to get into that because I would rather talk about like
Because there's quite a
narrators
few
and
of them
books. And
too.
yeah, there's quite
Yes.
a few of them.
There's a lot of different platforms and a lot of different options, and there's
Yeah.
subscriptions
One of
and
the
not, and
things
then you
One of
just
the
buy
things I'm really
outright.
loving right now are direct from author audiobook
Oh,
purchasing.
Hmm.
absolutely. If you find, like, if you're looking at an audiobook and you don't already have like an Audible membership, or even if you do and let's say you use your credit and you want to look for more, that is like the number one place to check first is see if they are selling it directly on their website. And I know that even though not everyone does that right now, I think a lot more people are going to start doing that this year
Hmm.
for some, not always fun reasons, but I think that it is for
Well,
the best as far as like purchase potential for these authors or earning potential. It makes a lot more sense. And it's nice because you know that you're directly supporting the author when you purchase that
Yeah.
way.
yeah.
So it's kind
Well,
of like of course.
and recently in the news, we've all seen the Brandon Sanderson thing that he is not going to put his books to Audible anymore. He
Yeah.
doesn't feel that their system is fair to the
Yes.
authors, which we're not going to get political or anything like that, but he kind of is bringing more attention to the
Yes.
fact that that buying from an author direct for your audiobooks is really, really helpful to them.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I won't get political either, but I will say that that maybe this is political. But I will say, Audible, when you're purchasing something through that, um, obviously, if you enjoy something and that's the easiest way for you to access it, then that's what you should do if that's
Mhm.
what you're comfortable with. But also, the author only gets 25% or up to 40% of that purchase. And that's minus additional fees that Audible just likes to tack on there without explanation. So potentially an author is getting maybe $3, if it's priced right, quite right, and that's not a lot for how much it costs to produce that audiobook. So that can be really frustrating. So if you don't already have an Audible membership, but you want to get into audiobooks, I would definitely highly suggest like some of the library options. Libro FM is really great because you can choose a local bookstore, or it doesn't even have to be local to you. You can just choose a small indie bookstore to support with your audiobook purchases. And that's really great. Chirp is a really good like kind of discount model. Like you can find sales that way, which
Mhm.
is again a lot of the reason that people do flock towards Audible. So that's kind of an alternative option. But yeah, I mean, it's really expanding a lot on other platforms. But you're right, direct to author purchases, if that's available to you, I really suggest it because it's the best way to support your favorite authors.
And I will say, if you're not desperate for brand new releases, so
Mhm.
if it's a book that's been out 60, 90 days,
Mhm.
I our listeners really love Anyplay.
Right.
FM. It's a streaming service, so it's kind of like Netflix. Um, and it is, I think it's 9.99. I wrote it
It's
down, I
nine ninety
think.
nine a month, but it's 24.99 a quarter. So you
Yeah.
can do it two different ways.
But there's a
Right.
good, that's the
It's a
other
pretty
thing that I
big
was looking
catalog
at,
of books.
catalog of romances.
Right.
Because sometimes you get into that, that's something that's come up through the podcast is not every library is the same. So just
Mhm.
because a book is on my library's Libby
It
Mhm.
does
is
not,
probably not on mine.
because
Right.
my,
Yeah. But you can request it,
you
although I don't
can.
yeah, like it will still take time, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's not. And also there are Audible exclusive titles, and in that
Right.
case, there's nothing you can do, right?
Mhm.
You would need to go through Audible. So I understand and I don't want to bite the hand that feeds us all.
Well, and
But
it's one of those things, it's not a perfect system. Like
yeah, yeah.
there's authors that do things that work best for them. And so
Mhm.
that you
Yeah.
just kind of have to deal
So
with that aspect of it
what do
too.
you think about Spotify now starting to trickle into the audiobook purchasing? It's only available in the US market, so I don't probably not because you're in Canada, so probably are
I
you
have
seeing it?
seen them. Yeah, I have been seeing them. I'm not sure if it's probably dependent on licensing agreements,
Right, it
because
is.
most of them, yeah, most of them that I've been seeing have been traditionally published audiobooks. So it's probably just if they have like North American rights. Um, but I mean, I don't mind it because it's a la carte purchasing, instead of like all you can listen, which we all know was something Audible tried and just didn't work out.
Mhm.
As far as romance goes with Audible Escape. So I think it's like a viable option. I don't know what like the deep details of the payout structure for that for authors. I know like
Yeah, I don't.
information about the actual distributor platform. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And Spotify, it's a big company. There's a lot of growth. I'm a Spotify listener in general. And I think I'm like interested. I'm keeping an eye out. I'm
Mhm.
Yeah,
interested to see what direction they go in.
I know that Stone by Sawyer Bennett is over there. That's her first title
Mhm.
that she put over there. And
Mhm.
she's kind of testing it out too because I was like, sister, what's going on here?
Yeah. And one of the ones that you mentioned before was Tempt, that new app,
Mhm.
which
Okay,
is
so we're
interesting.
so confused. I know that authors are signing for the book to be in there for a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
It is, so it's not available in the Apple App Store anymore.
Yes. So from what I've heard, it's iOS. The app isn't available, but it's supposed to be sometime this year, like earlier this year.
Okay.
Um, and so, yeah, I know because I also was like, why can't I download this app? What is going on? And was very
Well, and
frustrated.
wasn't it like it was available,
Well, so I
but
still
then
have
like it
it. I
wasn't?
downloaded when it first came out.
Mm.
I downloaded it and the app is there on my iPhone. I was told if I delete it, it will completely
Oh,
go away.
oh,
I can listen to the books that are on here, no problem. If I have an
okay.
Android device, it makes you purchase them. But they're really, again, pricing is negotiated between the author and the app developer, and they're not super expensive. They're kind of chirp pricing.
Right.
Um, but they will let
Well, chirp
you
sale pricing.
chirp sale pricing. They will
Right.
let you listen to like the first two chapters before
Oh,
you
Hmm.
you can
commit to
sample. That's
purchase.
nice.
But
Right.
then once you hit, because one of our podcast contributors, Jenny, she took one for the team. She bought a Carrie Ann
Well,
Ryan book, which we
well,
love
and also
Carrie Ann
because
Ryan, so it's fine.
she is the only one of the contributors that has an Android.
Oh, okay. So that's what you mean. Took
So
one for
none
the
of us
team. I
Yeah.
see.
and so
Downloading
we're
the
like,
app.
Jenny, you're the only one with this. You have to do
She's the only one. She's the one that turns our blue
Our
message to
chats are
green.
green.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's what we tell her.
It ruins our group chats.
So
Also, shout out to Carrie Ann Ryan, who just had a recent release, actually, Made It in Chaos. And I don't know if
Mhm.
you guys have listened to it or read it yet, but it is awesome.
I
I really like
Have you
paranormal
seen her
romance.
Patreon exclusive covers?
so we are both
No.
members of her
We are members of
Patreon.
her Patreon. I get the
Ooh.
regular covers, and Becky gets the Patreon
She's
exclusive
going old
covers.
school bodice rippers because
Oh my gosh.
They are very
Yes.
they're
nice,
gorgeous.
Okay. I
So
gotta
very
get my
sexy.
nice.
paws on those. That's
So
Mhm.
amazing.
sexy. When we're done recording, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should be a Patreon member.
It is
That
It
just
is
is
one
like the
of the
perfect
best
push.
it's one
Patreons.
of the best Patreons. And I adore Carrie Ann Ryan. And actually, like, I just messaged her today because she has a Montgomery book that's coming out at the end of the
Mhm.
month. And I was
Mhm.
like, friend, because she's coming to do a happy hour with us here on the podcast, which we do over live on YouTube. And I'm like, friend, when am I going to see this book? She's like, Becky, you've been asking me for this book since October. Don't act like it has anything to do with happy hour. We know
It
what you're
doesn't.
about. I'm like,
She
okay.
knows.
Yeah,
she's on to your games.
I saw her speak on a panel this year, and I hadn't met a lot of our authors in real life yet.
Hmm.
And also, she works with Kim, and she used to work with Marnie, one of our other producers, who's stepped away now just because she's like so busy as a narrator. But so like I hadn't really talked to her much, and I was just like blown away. I just immediately was like, okay, I love her so much. I need to read like all of her books, and I'm obviously still playing catch up because there's a lot of them.
There
But
are.
I really love it when, and I know like there are a lot of romance readers who don't love this, but I love it when an author goes into another subgenre. That's
Mhm.
like so exciting for me. I'm like, oh, what? Like they're gonna do something paranormal? Okay, I have to like, I'll drop like a series that I'm in to like shift over just to like mix things up. And she's so great at that. Like I just feel
Mhm.
like she's like, I don't know, I love her in that subgenre. So I really hope that like everyone's listening to that because it's so so good.
Yeah, it is really good. I like that she jumps around too. So if you're reading all
Mhm.
of her books, she gives us a lot of books every year, but we also get
Yes.
like a little bit of paranormal, and then we're
Mhm.
in love with the Wilder brothers.
Oh,
Those
but
boys.
we do have one complaint, and we have complained to her.
The E's.
Like all the E's. Like what the heck was she
She
thinking?
has like seven brothers and they all have E's, and we're like,
So
But
honestly, like
okay,
we were
I feel
trying to
like
talk
that's
about one of
accurate.
like we were talking about one of the books, and we knew who the hero or the hero was for that specific book, but then we were mixing all the brothers up, and we're like,
Oh, because of the
which?
E names.
Because they're like we didn't know which E it was.
I
Like
swear though,
eventually.
like if you get into one of those families that have a lot of siblings, like it turns into that. It's like the
It does.
Kardashians, right? And
yeah.
like for me, for instance, my name's Katie, my sister's name is Kelsey, my mom's name is Kathy, her sister's names are Kelly and Kim, and Kim is married to Kevin. Like there's so many K names. I don't know what is going on in our family, but it's almost like it like ricochets and takes over. So that feels realistic to
We
me.
were a Ray, a Robert, a Rebecca, and then my sister is Anne.
We had all different. We were all different. There's a Kelly and Alan and Aaliyah.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? Your parents probably didn't do that thing where they like yell the wrong name like six
Oh no,
times
they
before they get
totally
to yours.
do. They
Oh,
totally do.
I called children the dog's name the other day. I was yelling
oh
down the hall.
no.
I
No,
said
I
the
did that. I
dog's
have done
name.
that. I was yelling at my oldest, and I called him the dog.
So, Katie, what advice would you give to somebody that is saying, I've never listened to audiobooks and I would like to try them? I
Yeah,
always say start in your library because it's kind of risk free.
totally. Like listen to something you've already read that you really loved. That's your
That's
number one way for sure.
mhm.
Because, and obviously, if this only applies if you are a rereader, which like I 100% am. So that's always great advice. And I will do that. Like I have favorite books that I've read that I still haven't listened to in audio. And when I get a little inkling, I shift over. The other thing I would do, and like maybe this is just my producer brain, but I'm like a weirdo who will literally sit on like Audible's like desktop website for hours just listening through samples just to like see what narrators I haven't heard of. Obviously, that kind of applies to my work, but it also is just because I get into like a weird hole where I'm like, I gotta find all these new voices. Who is this?
Mhm.
And I gotta listen through, you know? So I really suggest like if you're excited about getting into audio, but you're like hesitant because you're not sure what voices you'll like, definitely just sit down and like listen through samples, take like one risk once you find one you think you like and like hope for the best. But the best thing to do is like once you find a narrator you like, that's when you click on their name and you find all the books they did and you listen to those.
I love that in Hoopla because that is actually so. Sebastian York is my unicorn narrator. Like, if
Yeah,
he
he's a lot
reads,
of people's
I
unicorn
know.
narrator.
I still have not listened to a full book by him yet.
I don't know what's wrong with
Oh,
you. I
well.
But I
love
Well, I
am
have
new to
Rex for
audio.
you.
I am new to the audio world here, people.
But
Well, welcome.
that's how I found other authors though in
Oh,
other
of
books because
course.
in Hoopla you can search and favor the narrators. And
Hmm.
so we were laughing because I was talking to one of our contributors, Heather, and I'm like, I don't think that I've heard Aiden Snow, like, because it was early on. I'm like, I don't think I
Hmm.
have. And then she's like, really? And then I went back. He did a whole series with Maxine Mitchell that was this boardroom series by Lydia Eicher, or Linda Eicher, that's like this whole voyeur boardroom
Oh, you were
sex
telling us
thing.
about that one
And
not too
Hmm.
he
long
did
ago.
that with her. And And Heather's like, I thought you listened to those audiobooks. I'm like, I did. I didn't realize that was him. Okay, yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wait, I do like him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And once you find those people, that is really the best way is to like get more into audiobooks is like, okay, whose voice did you love? Like find the next book that of theirs. And sometimes if you go through the list, sometimes you'll see like names of authors that obviously you've already read and know you love. And that helps too, right? Like it's less risky, I guess I'm using quotations there, but
Well, Leah and I were lucky enough. We just got the audiobook from Promises You
No,
Keep.
promise me always.
Promise Me
by A.L.
Always.
Jackson.
Yes.
So
We had never heard those two narrators.
I know, but this is also the first book that I went straight to audio. Like I've never read a book, I've never listened to the audio before I eyeballed a book. I think I will always listen to Amy's books in audio form because it was a whole new experience, like in my ears.
The
It was so
emotions
good
in that book.
Yes.
But those two narrators, I don't know.
Connor Cray, Samantha Brentmore.
Yes, I don't know who
Big time.
picked them, if Amy picked them or if her producer picked them, but they were perfect for that book.
I think that one, I mean, that again, that was Kim. So I think that one was like a joint effort, but I'm not exactly sure. I know that Amy has her favorites too. But yeah, Samantha Brentmore, first of all, I'm just gonna like straight up say is like one of my favorite narrators ever. She's so great. Not just as a reader, but like also just as a person. I'm sure maybe you guys have met her at like some author events, or if you haven't,
Not yet, no.
Well, I'm sure you will this year because I know she's going to a few, and she's just the sweetest like person to work with. She's so great, and she loves romance, so it's just really fun to work with her. And Connor just has that like, you know, perfect for romance voice. Like the second you hear him, you're like, oh yeah, okay, duh. Like
Yeah,
you've got to be reading romance.
It was such a great book. It was an experience in like
we've been telling everyone
yes,
we have a happy hour with A.L. Jackson this coming week after we record this, and to celebrate the release of that book with her. And like I've emailed her and her assistant Devin like 17 different times. I just need to tell you how much I loved this audiobook.
Well, it was funny because like I'm like I had emailed Devin. I was like, hey, I didn't get the book, and she's like, oh, I'll send it. And then Becky had gotten the audio, and she's like, oh, this is really good. So I emailed Devin again. I was like, hey, so Becky told me how good this audio is. Could you possibly send that to me too? And she's like,
that
of
was
course.
you guys, right? That's your
that's our production. Yeah.
So good.
And it's, we love Amy over here, obviously. And she writes those stories. Like it feels really impactful. And I think those two narrators really took that and ran with it. It's just one of those things where everything lined up, you know, and the performances really do it justice.
And the blend of their voices was like, it worked really, really well. Cause I listened to an audiobook. I won't say what book it was, but like, separately the audios were well done, but like mixed together in the same like connotation, it didn't work right, and I was really disappointed because it's one of my favorite books.
Katie and I had this conversation on Instagram before Christmas.
It comes up.
I was like,
it does.
I'd listened to a couple of books in a row that were this one pairing, and I'm like, it doesn't work for me. I like them separately. But together, it just, for my listening. And so I think that's something too. If you're new to audiobooks, do not get frustrated.
Yeah, don't be a one-trick pony. You got to try other.
If you're like, oh, I just didn't like that narrator's voice, I'm done with audiobooks. Don't do that. Because there's a lot of different voices. And actually, like, Leah and I are doing a reread of an older series that was Trad Pub. And they're read by one narrator. They're single narration. And it's the Perfect Gentleman series by Lexi Blake and Shayla Black.
I've never read it before, so this is my first foray into this series.
Fun.
But it's one narrator, and he does a really great job. It's like really great. So it might, like I have found that sometimes duet doesn't always work for me. Sometimes it does work for me. It just depends. So don't give up. Keep trying.
Find what you like. Some people love full cast. Some people love duet. Some people prefer dual. Some people prefer single. And you just kind of have to find your niche. And I think too, like, you're right. Some, like for me, one of the first, I I mean, Andy is like an obvious go-to, but one of the first narrators that I like really was like, I love this voice as a single narrator, especially, is Erin Mallon. Like, I will, and this is for our dual point of view books too. I'll be listening through, like, there's a Catherine Cowles book that she did for us kind of recently. I was listening through and I genuinely forget that it's not duet, because when she's reading the male voice, I'm just like, yeah, that's Joe Arden, duh. And then I pause like partway through a chapter and be like, wait, this is not in duet. This is dual. How is she doing that? Like, and like I'm always stunned. And I think she's just so talented. And there are a lot of narrators like that, like that they really are performing like to the max. And you're right, Becky, if they're paired, and I mean, that's kind of the producer's job, hopefully, is to find those perfect pairings, is like who are really going to play off of each other well, but also who are going to demonstrate the other person's performance well. And that's kind of where a producer comes in versus like self-producing on ACX. That can be harder to like figure out beforehand. It's kind of something you don't know until after.
Yeah. Okay, so what are some recent releases in audiobook that you have loved?
Oh my gosh, wow, that's going to be really hard to dwindle down. I mean, I mentioned a couple. I mean, I mentioned Made It in Chaos by Carrie Ann Ryan. Corinne Michaels just released Keep This Promise. And for all of our, Jacob Morgan girls out there, or actually, no, sorry, all of our Zachary Weber girls out there. Whoops. But he does, everyone's
He's open about it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Everyone's gonna love this one with him, but also Mary Jane Wells, who we had never worked with before. Great, like she does a lot of historical romance. Great voice in this book, and she's like got a British accent, and I was like just in the second I heard her voice. I love I love a good historical romance in particular in audio. Just I think it's just soothing sometimes. You're just like throwing it back, getting that English accent or Irish accent or Scottish accent, and you tend to find that a little bit more in historicals. But this one is like you get the benefit of that like comfy, like I don't know, she's just got like this comforting kind of voice, and it's so perfect for romance. And then paired with Zach, it's like a lot of, I shouldn't say fun because it's also a really emotional book.
It is.
But
I might have to listen to that one because
it's really good, and it feels different, I think, for her, like because of the narration. It's like a newer to us narrator, and that's really exciting.
Oh, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
And you guys did Whispers of You by Catherine Cowell, and that's Andy Arndt and Zachary Weber, and that was so good. We had early listen copies of that, and I was just like, that's nice.
Catherine is like, she's so, like, she knows what narrator she wants to work with. She's done a lot of like, thinking and work herself on choosing like who's the right fit for the right stories. And she just like, I don't know, she just kind of blows me away. She's such a hard worker, but she also is just doing like so much with this world that she's created. And there's a new world, starting out now. And I'm really excited to just like keep going with her. I can't wait to see, like, I feel like she's gonna be one of those authors that has like so many different worlds going on at once, and that you'll be able to like go back to throughout the years. Like she's definitely like a rereading
I think so. Yeah. And then we got to listen to Drake, which is by Sawyer Bennett, and that was Aiden Snow and Maxine Mitchell, and that
was
came
a really
out.
good one.
Yes, and there's a good pairing too, those two together.
That
nice.
blended really well.
Those two are so good together, and he did such a great job with Drake.
Drake is such an asshole. Like that character is such an asshole, but Aiden, like he portrayed that so perfectly.
Yeah.
Somebody was like, he's not really an asshole. And I'm like, I don't think he is, but I'm telling you, like, he could totally do the asshole.
He does good. He did a good asshole.
He does good
Drake
asshole.
Is such an asshole.
That
was a really bad out of context quote right there.
But we tell Sawyer all the time, she writes some of the best assholes.
She really does.
She's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like,
there is something to say about an author that can write an asshole really well.
Well, if they can make you like him, that's just chef's kiss.
That's
like
true.
there's nothing worse than like an asshole that you're like, no, this is just a straight up asshole. I hate him.
Right.
And at the end of the book, you still don't like him.
Yeah, you're like, no, don't date him, girl. What are you doing? Run away. Like, then that's never the case with her. He always wins you over.
He
for
always
sure.
wins.
Yeah.
So what do we have coming up from some lyric audio productions in the month of February? Because
Right.
I'm looking at this list and I'm like, okay, I listened to that one. I read an arc of that one. And yeah, okay, you guys got some great books coming out in February.
Yeah, right. I know. And I think, I don't even know if that's the whole list, but The Score by Kristen Proby, that one is narrated by Jason Clark and Kristen Lay. And I mean, again, Jason, I think especially like he's a tried and true fan favorite. And Kristen Lee is really great with Kristen Proby stuff. Like she does a lot of her stuff. So like she's very familiar with her world. And I think she captures that really well because she's very familiar with a lot of the side characters and stuff. So she can kind of tap into that. Layla Hagen has Matchmaking the Rival coming out. That is another Samantha Brentmore one. So if you listen to a Samantha Brentmore book and you like her,
I
this
had
is
an
perfect.
arc of that book because
book.
I am a Layla Hagen junkie. Like,
Oh, love that.
I love her books. So I had an arc of that. I just finished it today, actually. It's
wow.
really
Great timing.
So now I'm gonna need that audiobook now.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to go get the audiobook, of course. Yeah, okay, what else do we have here? We've got, well, you mentioned Whispers of You by Catherine Cowles and Promise Me Always by A.L. Jackson. I think there's a few more, but another one that I'm really excited about is Powerless by Elsie Silver. She just started producing with us at the end of last year. She's already released 2 audiobooks because we're just speed demoning our way through this and finding like the perfect casting. And this one like is just blowing up. Every single person who has gotten like an advanced listener copy is just obsessed because it's Teddy Hamilton, CJ Bloom. They sound perfect together. And Teddy is
I
the
could see that being a good pairing.
Teddy is like the perfect Teddy, like classic Teddy character in this book. Like he's just like he's like grumpy and like and snarky and like, well, I wouldn't even say grumpy. He's very snarky. He's very, I don't know.
Just
He
very
captures
Teddy.
it so perfectly. Like
I
head
was
over
gonna say,
to
I don't imagine Teddy is grumpy.
no, not
Definitely
grumpy.
snarky.
He's snarky. Yeah. And
Yeah.
he's very like, oh, I don't want to give anything away. I feel like people should just go to Elsie Silver's Instagram, or ours. I think there's a few clips, and then you'll like get the vibe that I'm talking about.
Did you see that Teddy joined TikTok this week?
I did, because he did a live, right? I didn't get a chance to watch that, but
The person he did the live with shared some clips because Joe popped on.
I did hear that. Yeah.
I can just imagine that chaos.
I'm like, seriously, children. They are so funny.
He's really funny. In general, it's like that's one person I've met like in quotations like online. I've never met Teddy in real life. It's super weird. So hopefully,
it's like
I don't know. Maybe he'll be at the Audies this year or something. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Katie, thank you for coming on and talking audiobooks with us. We really appreciate it. But you have to stick around because it's that time.
Oh,
for book
of the week. We are week like 7,068 of No Echo. Maybe someday.
And nobody can see my jazz hands.
Nobody sees her jazz hands.
I should just record it to put it on the Instagram and the TikTok.
You should, just of you doing jazz.
So people can see how like book of the week actually happens in real time.
Nobody really wants to see this.
Lots of excitement.
You never know. They might.
Okay, Katie, what was your book of the week?
Well, I finished recently Funny Feelings by Tara DeWitt, and I absolutely adored it. I don't think I've ever felt more, I've never felt like a character represented me as much as I did in this book with the heroine. She's so awesome. Also, not to like, humble brag, but she's like flawed in like very realistic ways. Like, and I think Tara DeWitt in particular, like lately, I think I read all 3 of her books that she has out like back to back to back, because as soon as I read one, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. I have to read all of them. Her characters feel so real to me, and there's a lot of humor, but there's also a lot of heart. And there's still like a decent amount of spice, so keeps me riveted.
Mhm.
But yeah, that book in particular, it was just so funny and so like heartfelt, and yeah, I just absolutely loved it. And I didn't listen to it. I eyeball read it, but it's the audiobook is narrated by Nelson Hobbs and who's the other? Stephanie
Stephanie,
Bentley.
yeah, Bentley.
Yeah,
It's
and I
in
haven't listened.
it's in
Oh, sorry.
Hoopla.
Is
It's
it?
in
There you
Hoopla.
go. I haven't listened,
I
but
wrote it down so I can
I
read it.
actually love Nelson Hobbs as a narrator. He's like a little bit more, like he's a little bit less well known, but he's really great. Like I've
Oh,
been casting him a lot the last few months.
He did the Chloe Lisi books.
Yes, and
Oh,
he's got a great sound. Like he's
I don't
another
think
one
I've
of those
listened to him yet
guys.
either.
Yeah, he's like he doesn't have as huge as a cat of a catalog as like Teddy, for instance, or Jason or
Mhm.
something, or Joe, but he's really starting to take off, and he's great to work with. He takes it really seriously, and he like is loving romance, and that just makes it way more fun.
so
So
I have
highly
listened to
recommend
him
him.
because he's Fall by Kristen Callahan is one of my most favorite
Oh, there you
books in her
go.
series, and I've listened to that audiobook. Like, see, again, this is why I love Hoopla, because I can search by narrator.
Totally.
What he's done.
And he's
Yeah.
done a lot of Max Monroe. So does he have a voice for the rom-com then?
I think so. I think he's like perfect for a rom-com. And he can still do like he could segue, I think, even into like darker stuff if he wanted to.
He has
Like,
some Penelope Douglas too, so
yes,
Oh
yeah.
my,
So I
those are
just
dark.
across the board would highly recommend him. I really, really like his sound. And I've cast him in a few things recently, and I'm gonna keep doing that this year. I'm gonna be pitching him a lot because I really like his voice.
excellent. I love that. Um, Leah, what's your book of the week?
It's actually ironic because my book of the week is Keep This Promise by Corinne Michaels.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
So I read book one of this series. I
Mhm.
read part of book two, but then things happened and I didn't end up finishing it. It's not a DNF. I just have not finished it yet.
Mhm.
And then I was like, oh, it's a secret baby. I'm totally on board with that. So I read book three.
Mhm.
It's really good. The emotion, the heartache, the basis of this, the secret baby makes sense, and it's not a
Yeah.
frustrating secret baby. But I really, really enjoyed it. And I've only read like 3 or 4 Corinne Michaels books. She's not one of those authors that like I really am drawn to, but this was a really good series.
Yeah, and I think I think you should listen to it too if you ever want to go back to it
Oh,
because
I will.
yeah,
Because
it's really
I
powerful.
definitely do better on a reread, like listening
Mm,
wise. But
mm.
yeah, I definitely want to listen to that audio because it
I
was
think she just handles emotional stuff so well, and like that's
mhm,
not as like I will admit that I try to like purposefully steer clear of like feeling my own emotions sometimes. Like I'm definitely an escapist reader. I'm like, okay, no, just give me a rom-com to like,
mhm,
laugh to. But when you like are ready for that and you're feeling it, and sometimes I trick myself, I'm like, oh, but the narrator's so good, I have to listen. And she's so good for that. Like
mhm.
she's one of those two that I think once you get into her, like you can just listen through her whole
Yeah.
backlist and love it.
Becky,
okay.
what's your book of the week?
Okay, so as we talked about in last week's episode, I've entered into my dark era of reading.
Ooh,
She's in the
Like,
dark ages
spicy.
right now.
I am Savage Vow by Zoe Blake. It's
Hmm.
a arranged forced marriage Russian mafia romance, but what was so great, and it's a virgin heroine, and I know that can be tricky for some people. What's great is when she finds out that is going to be forced to marry, it's actually her best friend's older brother. She goes
Hmm.
on the run for 3 years, and he chases her.
Oh, he
Ooh, a
chases
chase.
her. I do
That's
like
fun.
He
that.
has to
You didn't
chase her.
tell me that part.
Yeah, so she's like hiding her identity, and he chases her down to try to find her. But what was really great in this book was they dabble a little bit into the art world. She is a painter, but also like loves art, and he is a collector of art. And my art history loving soul was there for it.
See, I would be all over that
It
because
was really
I
good.
was an art major.
Yeah,
Well, there you go.
same,
Perfect
same.
rec.
It was really good. I really enjoyed that. So, Patreon update. We appreciate our Patreon supporters and would not be able to bring you the podcast out your support. We currently have 4 open tiers on Patreon. Those start at $5 a month and include membership to Drunk Book Club and other exclusive content. We did reach our first goal of 40 members, and our next goal is 60. And we're able to bring you 3 episodes a week due to our amazing Patreon community. And we have other perks like Coffee of the Month Club, exclusive episodes, swag packs, and Drunk Book Club.
And speaking of Drunk Book Club, our February Drunk Book Club is happening on February 18th at 3 p.m. So our international members of Patreon can hang out with us. And we are reading Ripple Effect by J. Ben. Do you know how to pronounce her last name?
Bensington.
Benston.
Thanks.
Look at that. We don't have to ask. Katie's here for it.
Got it. Okay, so this book has been on my TBR because when we did our other audiobook episode,
Because of Teddy
said this is the only book that has ever given him a book hangover.
Oh, yeah, she writes some powerful books, so that doesn't shock me, but that's really cool to know. That's
And
Yeah,
I
he said
had
it was
read
like chapter
Cake.
9 or chapter 12. I don't remember the
Something.
chapter.
And I
but-
liked Cake, but this was it's a forced proximity was our theme for February.
Mm.
And so we're going to read Ripple Effect, and I bought the audiobook and I'm ready.
Fun. Well,
ready.
I hope you love it.
I'm sure. You know, there's very few I don't love.
Yes, I think you will, based on what I've heard so far. I think you'll love it for sure.
We also have our annual Galentine's Day celebration is coming February 11th. We just updated our merch shop with a cool Galentine's Day design t-shirt, and we are going to make signature drinks and paint a watercolor bookshelf. We will teach you how to do that. And this is open to anybody in the romance book community. You do not have to be a member of Patreon to join us.
We are also currently seeking nominations for the best small town of Romancelandia. Nominations are open on our website until February 1st, and voting will start on February 6th.
So when this episode drops, it'll be time to start voting.
Yes.
And then you can find all our upcoming dates in events, including book club happy hours, plot a book with Sawyer Bennett, and reading challenges at bookcaseandcoffee.com/events. Leah, read the programming note so you can rage.
Okay, so we do have a small programming note for quick shot listeners. Becky and I are reading The Perfect Gentleman series by Shayla Black and Lexi Blake. The first episode is going to drop February 14th. Now, this is a 5-book series with an overarching storyline. They are romantic suspense. Now, Becky is making me read the book, record the episode, and then I'm not allowed to read the next book until the episode is recorded because we are spoiling. So I'm a little ragey because I have read book 1 and book 2, but I am not allowed to read book 3 yet because we haven't recorded episode 2. These are amazing books though, which is making me extra ragey because I need to know, and I will text her questions and updates and she just will ignore me because she's not spoiling this for me.
I'm not. I've been trying
It's going to be
for
worth
3
it.
years.
She has been telling me to read this series forever and I keep putting it off.
Yeah.
And so she got this harebrained scheme that we're going to
This is
do a
her
quick
revenge.
shot. This is her revenge.
It is. And Greg Bordeaux reads the audiobooks.
Does he do
Oh,
all 5
great.
of them?
I don't think he did the first one, but I think he does all the rest of them.
Mhm.
Does he have an accent in that, or is he reading with an American accent?
He's reading with an American accent. Is he
Okay.
not?
No, he is American, but he is really good with accents, so that's why I asked.
Well, he does all of Max Walker's books, who
Mhm.
writes Romantic Suspense,
Mhm.
and they're phenomenal. Like if you guys have not read Max Walker or listened to his audiobooks, they're really good. And Greg reads them.
Mm.
So Greg is like up there with me for like him and John Lane. Like
Oh,
Sebastian,
yeah. Oh,
John
yeah.
Lane, and Greg. Like that's my reverse harem of audio narrators.
I mean, John Lane is another one great with accents, so
Why
that makes sense.
choose?
I love him. He does all of Rena Morgan's books,
Mm-hmm.
and I love him. Love him. And he does the Russian, because she has a Russian mafia series, and he
Mhm.
does it, and he gets all the accents and the words, and I'm just like,
Oh, yeah.
I love it. Anyway, Katie, thank you so much for joining us for this episode.
Thank you for having me. It's always so fun. I really appreciate you guys inviting me back, and it's nice to see your faces, hear your voices after the new year.
It's nice. It's nice to have you here and to see you and get to hang out and talk audiobooks. Like that's a bonus.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. So anytime.
Until next time, everyone.
Happy reading, everybody.
Find us on Instagram at Buzzing About Romance or on Twitter at Buzzing Romance. If you like the podcast, please leave a review. If you'd like to support us directly, join the Bookcase and Coffee Patreon and receive exclusive content only available to Patreon members. Check out bookcaseandcoffee.com for our on-the-shelf show notes.